Looking at the bag I was carrying, thinking, but.
It was very slight.
Ah. Okay, before we actually start the question and answer session, I want to ask, how many people will be leaving tomorrow, at some point tomorrow? Okay, a few. And now I want to ask whether any people here wish to take the 3 refuges and 5 precepts who haven't taken them previously. So we have 1, 2. So you'll both be here then? Okay, so we could do it on Tuesday probably. Tuesday morning then. Okay, so I guess this is somebody has written a question. Let me take this written question first. So the chart is gone, but the question was regarding the chart that I had where I showed what I call the receptive phase. Those chittas are the result of past karma. The javana is the new karma. Registration is also a result of past karma. Then he says, I think this is related to the new karma, isn't it? No, the registration is the result of past karma. It's not related to the new karma. The registration registers the object that appears. The object appears somehow through the influence of past karma, and the early receptive chittas within the process, that is the sense door consciousness, or the sense consciousness, the receiving consciousness, investigating consciousness, are results of past karma, and the registration consciousness is also a result of past karma. Yes?
I think I was perplexed, substantially so, by pretty much the same question.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of reasons for that, actually. First, everything that we had learned prior to this afternoon,
Yeah.
The jhavanas were antecedent to registration.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose I wrongfully assumed that the jhavanas, the scanning through this material, were relevant to registration
Yeah.
and somehow influenced registration.
Of
But
course.
maybe that's wrong. I mean, maybe they're independent processes.
The registration consciousness is, in a sense, registering the object that has appeared to all of the other previous chittas. So it's registering the object that appears to the javanas, but the javanas are the karmically active chittas. The registration consciousness registers that object, the object that's been cognized by the javanas, but the registration is said to be karma resultant.
Yeah,
And so it follows, the registration consciousness follows the nature of the object. It doesn't follow the nature of the javana. So, for example, somebody gives me dog food.
Yeah, I got that one.
So, it's an unpleasant object, right?
Yeah.
Which is, so the sense consciousness, seeing it, tasting it, the receiving consciousness, the investigating consciousness are results of unwholesome karma. I have a strong mind, so I develop a wholesome citta with equanimity, and I eat the dog food. So that's a wholesome citta. Those are wholesome cittas, the javana process.
Yeah.
Then the registration cittas are registering the dog food, the sight in the first process, later the taste of the dog food. But those are still unwholesome, resultant cittas.
So then it would appear that the jhana process is sort of irrelevant to registration. It's sort of a standalone process that occurs with registration.
Yeah, I think we could put it that way.
Oh, goodness, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
The other problem was having to do with what, let me call it, the Standing Committee on Pleasant and Unpleasant Objects. That would seem to be a highly selective committee. I mean, they had no Shudras in that thing. They had all the middle people that were mentioned in it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
They had all the middle people that were mentioned in it. And I mean, how can you have a standing committee on what's pleasant and unpleasant?
I have to say,
vis-a-vis the dog food.
I told you I find that problematic.
Yeah.
But this is just what the commentary says. And it struck me afterwards, leave the dog food aside. But, okay, the standing committee, as you put it, these would be Indian monks.
Yeah.
So they're judging what's considered desirable for, they say, what, accountants, what were the people? Accountants, workers, merchants in India. So they would have, a nice spicy curry is desirable. Nice spicy, chicken, well, maybe they're vegetarian. Or nice spicy dal curry.
Yeah.
Whereas some poor fellow Buddhist in China is offered this Indian dal curry, spicy dal curry, and eats it and goes, what is that? Too hot? Too flavorful? Don't like it.
Actually, it's reassuring to realize that not everything was so tightly logical, even expressed in today's terms.
Yeah, yeah. Not to speak of a group of, cowboys in Texas or Oklahoma served a big steak dinner, and for them, that is the most desirable food. But our, vegetarians elsewhere will think, ugh. Okay, your name was? Douglas. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. I kind of have a follow-up question to Ed's question. Yeah. In this group of people that would find things pleasant and unpleasant, one would imagine that sort of the typical desires for wealth and for pleasure, all these things would be operative. My question is, if these things are of their nature wholesome, is it wholesome?
Well, desirable.
Desirable, of their nature desirable. How do we square that with yoniso manasikara in terms of understanding at a deeper level what is?
I think, I guess I'm supposed to play the role of the advocate for the ordinary people who are judging what's desirable and undesirable here, because I don't feel so comfortable with that assessment myself. Let me just see what they say exactly to refresh my memory.
in which what does it say? It says on 173, it's discussing jhavenas, and it says, while the sight of a beautiful woman for a meditative monk may, let me see.
Yeah.
It should be noted that while the resultant chittas are governed by the nature of the object, the jhavenas are not, but vary in accordance with the temperament and proclivities of the experiencer. So that seems to be indicating something,
Yeah.
to some degree, how that could work, but I don't really understand it very well.
Yeah, so this Abhidhamma commentary, the Samoha Vinodini, it says that the distinction between what is intrinsically desirable and undesirable obtains by way of the average person. And then the quotation says it's distinguishable according to what is found desirable at one time and undesirable at another time by average people such as accountants, government officials, burgesses, landowners, and merchants. Okay, so this is just sort of what is considered desirable and undesirable obtains from the standpoint of the ordinary person with their ordinary experience. And so the yoniso manasikara, that is the deep or wise reflection upon the object, that will bring out the deeper nature of the object, the way it will be perceived, particularly from the standpoint of directing oneself towards the goal of the Buddha's teaching. But this is distinguishing what's desirable and undesirable, not from the standpoint of somebody who practices yoniso manasikara, but just the spontaneous impression that would be had by Mr. or Miss XYZ. But again, I find that problematic because, tastes vary so much even within a single people, not to speak of the differences, like what is the standard that one takes? People living in India in, say, the 2nd century BC, and how to square their taste with those living even in China, Europe, Africa, North America, South America, different centuries. The tastes are just so different. And by the way, Stephen remarked before that when the dogs come to compose their Abhidharma, they call it Abhidogma. Okay, Sam has a question, and Tom, right, yeah.
Thank you. Bhante, on page 164, the very last sentence, it continues on to 165.
Yeah.
The mind that has been nurtured on such an input of prior experiences. Is this referring to memory or a subconscious? I'm not sure how.
Let me just read it again just to get... Yeah, this would be, like all of the memory impressions along with their emotionally loaded content would be sort of triggered, even if it doesn't lead to an active memory thought, an active recollection or a clear recollection of an object. But when one sees something that's vaguely familiar, that reminds one of something either pleasant or disturbing, it could trigger a whole series, many, many waves of potential thought formations.
And is it, I'm not sure how to phrase this, but are we using that, does that generate more karma or more bad karma by, or is that karma kind of resolved in the conditioning or?
Well, he's talking about the vibrations. The condition is set for the vibration of the bhavanga, and then when the vibration of the bhavanga is strong enough to set off a mind or process, so in that mind or process there'll be some javana chittas, and the javana chittas are generating karma. But if that if the javanas in that mind or process are pretty much just sort of recognizing the object, but not really responding to it in any kind of definitive, determinate way, there'll be, I would say, a very weak karmic creation. But it's only really when one undertakes a decisive action based upon that recollection, an action either bodily, verbal, or a very determinate mental reaction, that a strong karma is generated.
Hi, Bhante. My earlier question was an attempt to map the cognitive process to the aggregates, but I'd like to ask the question a different way. Are we able to show within the cognitive process where craving arises, craving being a sense-based reflex, and where might clinging or grasping arise?
Yeah. Okay. Craving is actually another term for greed. So the greed in those chittas associated with, rooted in greed, would be the craving. And then clinging is understood to have two aspects to clinging. One aspect is, we see in the clinging to sense, of the four types of clinging mentioned in the suttas, there's the clinging to sense pleasures and clinging to views, including clinging to the view of what's called grasping of rules and observances, and then the view of self, or the clinging to a doctrine of self. Those three types of clinging are types of views. So the clinging to sense pleasures would be a strengthening of the greed. So it's actually the mental factor of greed, but when the greed becomes stronger so that one is not just desiring an object, but holding to it, clinging to it, that is clinging to sense pleasures. And then the factor of the three types of clinging that are modes of views, the general clinging to views, clinging to the view that purification comes through rules and observances, and clinging to a doctrine of self. Those are just like three modes of the mental factor of views. So those views arise in the four chittas rooted in greed that are accompanied by view. So if we go back to the table on page 28, actually it's not so clear there. It's better to go to the on page 32, 33. Actually, starting at the bottom of 32, we have chittas 1 and 2. Those are chittas, these are all chittas which are rooted in greed, but 1 and 2 are associated with wrong view, and chittas 5 and 6 are associated with wrong view. So those will be the chittas that are active in clinging to views. And then any of the 8 could be involved in the any of these 8 chittas can be involved in clinging to sense pleasures. If it's just the very bare clinging to sense pleasures, just holding to them, then it's dissociated, disconnected from views. But if one is clinging to them with the belief, with the view that, there's no life after this, nothing to worry about, one should just enjoy as much pleasure as one can, then it's accompanied by view. Okay, Ying, and anybody? Okay, please.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that I understood your teaching today.
Yeah.
Actually, my question is very similar to the one that the lady Selena asked earlier today.
Yeah.
On page 153, sixfold presentation of objects.
Yeah.
So at 5 sense doors, they are divided into 4.
Yeah.
At mind door, they are divided into 2.
Yeah.
My question is this subjective or objective? Or another approach of the question is, when one is able to tell that this presentation of particular object is very great or slight or what, or clear or obscure.
Yeah.
At the beginning of, so at the end of registration, or
It's not that we are able to tell, but it depends upon the number of taking the sense, the presentation at the sense doors, the 5 sense doors, it doesn't depend on us at all. It
Okay.
depends upon the strength of the
Right. So-
position of the object, the
Right.
time that the object impinges on the sense door. If the object is at its prime, right after the arising moment,
okay.
because the object will last for 17 mind moments, then there's time for 17 mind moments to arise in that process, including the 2 registration chittas. So that's very great.
So that's objective.
Yeah, it's objective.
But one can only be able to understand this or realize this at the very end of the whole process.
Say again?
So I won't be able to know whether this presentation of object is clear or obscure at the very beginning.
No,
of the,
one can't
right.
know. Yeah.
Okay.
One doesn't know.
Okay, thank you. This is one of the 2 questions. My second
Yeah.
question is, so we know that mind, action, and speech
Yeah.
all can create karma.
Yeah, yeah.
And action and speech are oriented by or affected by the mind.
Yeah, they are
So,
expressing.
Yeah, my question is, when during the mind movement, when action or speech would take place?
Put the question again.
Will an action or specific action or speech
Yeah.
take place
Yeah.
at the very end of the whole process of the mind, like at the end of the second registration? For instance,
Okay, let me I think I get the question. I would say that the action of speech or body would take place in that it would be the javana process which is activating body and speech to either utter words or to perform some action. But we have to understand that when there's speech taking place, action taking place, what is going on is that many processes are arising, running through, and ceasing. So even while I'm speaking, to form one word, the word one, say, there are many, many cognitive processes. These would be mind or processes sort of instructing me to utter the word one. And so it's the volition within these successive processes which is in somehow activating the body or the vocal organs, the organs of speech, to articulate the word one.
Thank you, appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Well, you see, what actually creates the karma is the volition. So speech is an expression of volition. Volition is a factor of mind. So what is creating the karma is the volition, which is activating speech and expressing itself through speech. Similarly, what is creating the karma when I perform a bodily action, it's not the body itself, but it's the volition activating the body and motivating the body to perform a particular deed.
But then it's still not the action that's acting. It's the mind that's creating. Sorry. But it's still the mind that's creating the karma. It's not like my arm is going to say, oh, I'm going to hit somebody or steal something. It's the mind that...
Yeah, it's the mind that creates the karma, but there's a difference, say, between the karma created just if the mind thinks of doing something but doesn't actually do it, and if that same volition expresses itself through bodily action. Okay, so somebody is getting on my nerve. No, not you. No, nobody here. Let's say somebody, when I'm walking in Manhattan, somebody, or riding a train, some guy behind me is talking loudly on his cell phone, getting on my nerve. Okay, I think, okay, I'm going to turn around and give that guy a punch in the face. Of course, I don't have those thoughts. But I'm just saying, hypothetically, okay, but then I remember, Bhante, you're a monk, you have to be peaceful and patient. So I stop, but I'm just thinking, keep that arm under control, keep that arm under control. You could always get up and move to another seat. Okay, so I just think I would really like to give that guy a punch in the mouth, but I restrain myself. Okay, so there the thought is occurring, the volition is there, but it's not activating the body. Okay, so there's some unwholesome karma being created, but it's not as heavy as if I lose control and say, look, monks are people too. Here I am sitting in the train trying to meditate peacefully, and this guy is blowing my concentration with this gab, 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 gab on his cell phone. So let me turn around and I punch him. You don't have to go like this. Okay, Hector and Mr. Yeah, Hector first and you second. Okay.
And may I repeat the same question that I asked before the lunch break? So because I'm still not very clear about this.
Okay.
May I refer to page 155? There is a diagrammatic explanation of the complete I-Do process in which the pasvavanga triggered to the moment of this the process, which contains 17 mini moments. But that 17 mini moments are counted starting from vibrational bhavanga. Is that correct?
No, the 17 moments
Includes the past.
it includes the past bhavanga.
Also. So now referring to the figure which is elaborating, superimposing on that simple process in terms of very great object, slight object, and very slight object, which
Yeah.
is shown on page 161.
Yeah,
The diagrammatic explanation.
yeah,
In that, before the objects come in, the term is used like notation with Bhavanga notation is B,
yeah,
because it is a stream, continuum.
yeah,
As soon as the process, that sampling moment started,
yeah,
it is changed to P for
Yeah.
the past Bhavanga,
yeah,
and the present Bhavanga after vibration is noted still as B. If you see that in the same sampling moment, in the case of very great object,
yeah.
past Bhavanga has only one moment.
Yeah,
And then after that, vibration,
yeah,
Bhavanga started.
yeah,
And after that, the whole process started,
yeah,
up to registration.
yeah,
Whereas in the case of very slight object,
yeah,
that sampling moment is also occupied by 10 to 15 past Bhavanga.
right.
So it means to say that, unlike in the very great object,
Yeah,
it is now replaced with past Bhavanga.
right.
Maybe depending upon the intensity of that mind moment, the very slight object may vary by the span of influence of the past Bhavanga. Is that my understanding correct?
I didn't quite catch the last.
We have 10 to 15 in the case of very slight object.
Yeah,
The influence of past Bhavanga
yeah,
or dominance of past Bhavanga
yeah,
is shown by, in the very uppermost one is 10,
yeah.
and the last one is 15.
Right,
Then only the vibration triggered.
right.
And then the present Bhavanga came in.
Yeah,
So my question is, if past Bhavanga is also overshadow or whatever to the present moment,
yeah.
is that correct? On the 17th?
Overshadow the present moment.
No, but why we count the past Bhavanga in the case of slight object?
This is because the object is impinging on the sense door after the object has gone through, this would be 10 to 15 moments of its existence.
Yes.
You know, so there's,
Yeah.
the object is pretty much, it goes like this, something like a wave.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of on the decline. So the cheetahs are flowing by, and now the object impinges on the sense door pretty late in its lifespan. And so the bhavanga is flowing by here.
It intercept only at
Yeah, let me see if I could represent this diagrammatically. Okay, so this is the material dharma, the form that's come into range. Okay, these are the cheetahs. Okay, now, suppose now the object comes into range. I'd have to look at this again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So the object has been going along, it hasn't struck the sense door until we reach,
10 or 11.
yeah, I think the 11th.
Yeah.
Okay, so now there's not enough room here to go through even any kind of jhavana phase,
Never
not
reached
even to determining. So all it could do, because the object is pretty weak, it's like gone through 10 moments of its lifespan without hitting on the sense door. So only at the 11th moment it strikes the sense door, and so it causes the bhavanga to vibrate. So we have a vibration here, and there's not enough room for anything else to take place. So we just get that vibration, and then there comes, for the remaining
Bhavanga.
moments,
Yeah.
is a return to the bhavanga.
Yeah, that is clear, Bani. What I am not very clear is the usage of, prior to that number one, Bhavanga, there is also Bhavanga there.
Oh yeah. These will
Because
be.
that was a previous
Yeah, these are just.
moment.
These are just the flowing on of the bhavanga
Yeah.
before the object,
Comes in.
before this sense object, this visible form arises. So here, the visible form has not yet arisen.
So in terms of the notation Bhavanga B,
Yeah.
prior to the project, the objects comes in,
Yeah,
and the notation P
yeah,
until the vibration,
yeah.
they are basically the same.
They're basically the same.
That is what I was.
Yeah, it's just showing that these bhavangas flow by. It's sort of like, BC and what is it, AC?
Yeah, but they are time element. All
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So maybe we call this before the form and after the form object has arisen. Okay, Mr. Priti and Hector. Yeah.
I think I'll apologize for the question first.
No, there's never a need to apologize.
In reading the second paragraph on page 172, where basically it uses the word intrinsic nature, it immediately triggered my a contradiction to my understanding of emptiness. And the whole paragraph basically reads a contradiction. So I guess the question I have is, what would the Abhidhamma look like if one took into account emptiness? Where you have to actually generate the object that you're going to cognize first. Meaning that if the objects are non-existent, but I'll leave it at that.
Wait, but
Yeah, I got that.
But this is speaking about instances not where one generates an object that one cognizes, but the object is already there, impinging on the sense faculty.
Right, but if I take my understanding of emptiness to a greater depth,
Yeah.
and all reality is of mind, including what we call conventional is still of mind, so that there is no existence without the mind creating whatever it is we're looking at.
I wouldn't say that on the basis of the early Buddhist teaching that it's the case that all existence is created by the mind. Like, of course, what we call conceptual reality or conventional reality is the product of mental construction. But there are certain given factors, components of experience, which are acting upon the mind, which, in fact, the mind and the mental factors themselves are things which are actualities, which have actuality in themselves. And so it's on the basis of the actualities, the things that have what I call concrete existence or effective existence, in the sense of causally, a good word is efficient, causally efficient existence, that these are the things that have actual concrete existence. Then on the basis of that, in the mind, then we create the conventional reality, the conceptual reality.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, that's good. Let us go to my far left.
Thank you, Bhante. Despite your admonition to us not to be caught up with the numbers, I'm still a little bit caught up with some of the numbers.
Okay.
So my question is, first of all, it's an observation. It just seems to me from the text that the author didn't mention the length of the mental object, even though the distinction between obscure mental object and the clear mental object is mentioned, but it doesn't specifically mention, the duration of the mental object, because from what I remember, the duration of the material object is 17. Is 17 times of the duration of the chitta. So it just leads me to I don't know. It just seems like the logical corollary is that the mental object are they the chittas themselves, or are they? Is there a difference between the objects of the mind and the mental activities?
Yeah, the mental object, as we came across yesterday, can be the mind. It can be mental factors. That's when we take our own mind as the object, and that would be like a previous chitta, or previous chaitasikas. It can be the subtle matter. It can be what's called the sensitive matter. Then it can be nibbana with the supramundane chittas, and then concepts. Now it seems to me that it doesn't mention a lifespan for the mental object because there isn't a fixed lifespan for the mental object. A material form has a fixed lifespan. But when the mind is taking a mental object, that mental object will last just through the whole process, through the whole cognitive process, but it doesn't have like a fixed lifespan because it's being entertained or cognized by the mind. Okay, Mr. Prithvi, yeah.
My understanding of those two questions, I think is relevant here. The mental object, as you said, all of them are nama. They're just one mind moment for it. The chitta moment that has has three sub-moments. So because the mind chitta has three sub-moments, the other is three sub-moments, the first moment are active for both, automatically gets, there's no, I think it may be wrong. I thought there would not be a chitta past process in mental thing, right?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I just was thinking back to her question. Actually, this is an interesting problem that you're pointing to, that if one is cognizing a past chitta, then the chitta isn't present at that time. So what is it that one is cognizing? What is it that one is aware of? Is it the impression of the citta? So one couldn't say that one is knowing the citta itself if the citta isn't present. So one is just knowing the impression that that past citta has made. It's a little bit problematic, I have to say. The same with the Chaitasikas.
Bhante, is there a past bhavanga in mental mind door? I don't think there is.
No, because the idea of the past bhavanga means the bhavangas that have flowed by from the time the sense object has impinged on the sense door.
Because it is not there because both bhavanga and the mind door has very powerful at the initial stage. So both it catches it right away.
Actually, the bhavanga is the mind door itself.
So
and so the mind door process arises directly from the bhavanga.
Right. So both of them at the arising, they catch, and so there's no past bhavanga.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And one thing that strikes me very much, I mean, I have to say this, though I explain the Abhidhamma here, I'm teaching it, but it's not the case that I'm a defender of the Abhidhamma point of view in all respects. No, this is truthful. That it seems that once one creates a very fixed conceptual framework, one could, and then takes it to represent actuality exactly the way it is, one will start to get into various conceptual problems. And like some of these problems are what pointed out by Nagarjuna in his criticism of, would be not the Theravada Abhidharma, but he was criticizing the other Sarvastivada Abhidharma. But if like a citta functions as a condition, one citta functions as a condition for the next citta, and yet the previous citta ceases before the next citta arises, then the first citta is non-existent. And so how can it become a condition for the second citta? How can a non-existent thing function as a condition?
So there is a potential space there, and that's what some people went on saying Buddha nature and all sorts of things.
No, I wouldn't say that that necessarily leads, that there's necessarily a space and that you fill this in with other ideas. It's just that when you start conceiving of the mind as distinct, discrete cittas following each other in a kind of mechanical way, one could get caught into various conceptual problems.
Yes, sir.
So in the Abhidhamma course that I gave last year, I said that there are two ways to look at the Abhidhamma. One way is to see it as a practical guide which can be helpful for understanding the nature of the mind, how the mind and mental functions operate, and how we can use this to help us with our development on the Buddha's path. The other way is to look at and this is the way which is often upheld by many of the more conservative Theravadan elements. The Abhidhamma is the exact, map and model of the mind. Everything exactly the way it is. Like, these are the fixed number of cittas. These are the fixed number of chaitasikas. Everything the way the Abhidhamma describes it is exactly the way it is.
Yes, sir.
And then if you take that sort of theoretical model, as I said, you can get caught up into these conceptual dead ends, conceptual labyrinths and conundrums.
But when the Abhidhamma provokes us to put these questions, it's serving its purpose.
Say again?
When the Abhidhamma, reading this Abhidhamma, makes you think and pose those questions, it is doing its purpose for us to go on.
Yeah.
I want to make a comment on this, the Rupa, Chitta, and the past Bhavangas and all that.
Yeah.
To make the argument just the other way around, somebody's walking by, I went there, want to get his attention, I wasn't able to do it. If I slap it, it suddenly turns towards me, and if I just sit there and quietly and all that, doesn't. So if I look if the rupa, the object, is not able to get the attention of bhavanga, so it's starting from the 1 to 17, that's my lifetime. I'm not able to arouse that chitta to look at me and think about me until 10, you're not going to do any. So that's how it's easy to understand. But if you give me later on, I have a real question I wanted to ask. I could sit with you and ask, but that's the fundamental thing. Maybe make me to come here. I'll give the mic. And it's difficult. Maybe it takes a few minutes. So whenever you give me permission, I'll talk.
Okay, Siu has the question. Oh yeah, I think Abhidhamma has something. But please take the microphone.
No, sorry, Bande. I just want to say, because my understanding is that Tattva, that means the register consciousness, take the past and the future and the present as the object, right, alambana. So I don't know whether that helps to solve the thinking about the past issue. I mean, in terms of the theory of
you said the
because the registration mind consciousness actually take this past and the future and present object as their alambana. That's the definition, I think. Anyway, sure. So.
Okay, the registration consciousness with a sense object. Yeah, with a sense object, it would have to take a present object. But in the mind door process, it could take past, present, or future. Yeah, of course one could think about the past, but sort of the question in my mind is, if the citta is past, how can one take the citta itself as an object, rather than some kind of impression that the citta leaves, that the past citta has left on the mind stream? I just don't know how that's... Okay, I think Siu had a question.
Yeah, Bhante. Coming to perhaps the practical application side of things.
Yeah.
So in that famous saying by Buddha to Bahya Daruchira, you know, like ditte ditta mattang, in seen, only the seen.
Yeah.
So is there a Abhidhammic version of or explanation for that? For example, does it mean we should stop the mind process without giving rise to any consequent mind processes that were...
consequent mind processes.
Consequent. Does it say that we need to stop this mental activity at a certain point from Abhidhamma point of view?
Okay, I would not understand it to mean that one has to stop only at the sense door javana process and not have any mind door processes arise. Since it's to get any kind of clear, within our normal dealings with the world, to get any kind of clear, distinct knowledge of things, the sense door processes have to be followed by mind door processes. Like if I'm coming up to this table, if I'm going to be sitting here on the chair, the visual impressions of the surface, the back, which is just like, to the sense door process, it's just a mass of colors in some kind of shape. So all of this has to be synthesized into a particular image. Then it has to be processed through conceptualization to know that this is a chair, and so I have to know that this is a chair for use. And so I don't understand the Buddha's advice to Bahya. For those who are not familiar with this, there's a famous sutta. It's a short sutta in the Udana, where an ascetic by the name of Bahya comes to the Buddha. He's very desperate for instructions. And so the Buddha, he thinks he might die at any moment. So he comes to the Buddha. He goes to the monastery first. He asks, where is the Buddha? And the monks tell him the Buddha has gone into town for his alms round. Then Bahya comes goes into town, comes to the Buddha and says, "Venerable One, please instruct me for my own welfare." The Buddha says, "This isn't the time for answering questions. You can see I'm on my arms round." A second time, Bahi asks. A second time, the Buddha says, "This isn't the time." A third time, Bahi asks. And now, when he asks 3 times, then the Buddha has to answer. So the Buddha then says, "In the seen, there will be only what is seen. In the heard, there will be only what is heard. In the sense, there will be only what is sensed. In the cognized, there'll be only what is cognized." Then the rest is rather enigmatic in the Pali. It goes, "When for you in the seen there is only what is seen, in the heard, in the sensed, in the cognized there is only what is cognized, then Bahya, you will not be by that. When Bahya, you will not be by that, then Bahya, you will not be therein. When Bahya, you are not therein, then for you there will be neither here, nor beyond, nor in between the two. Just that is the end of suffering." And then when the Buddha said that, then Bahya, right on the spot, achieved arahatship. What? Okay, wait, I didn't finish yet. Okay, so the way I understand it is that it doesn't mean that he just stops at the sense sphere, at the sense door jhavana process, but that he doesn't build up upon, he has to, it's okay for him to go into the mind door processes and to get the basic conceptual picture of the world, but then not to build up on that projections which are due to delusion, to craving, to conceit, to wrong views. So in other words, it's not to interpret what is seen, heard, sensed, and cognized by way of the ideas of this is mine, this is what I am, this is myself. That's the way I would understand it. Okay, 1, 2.
My question has something to do with the time scale. Going back to your example of eating tofu. So I want to eat a tofu. Does it count as one chitta?
Oh, when thinking I want to eat tofu.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's many, many chittas.
So the point I want to say is like, I think maybe there's one volition or one chitta, I want to eat a tofu, but when I talk it out, it takes me 6 seconds to say it.
Yeah, but it's not one chitta. It's what will happen is that these will be like mind or processes. There'll be maybe how the first thought or process comes in. I don't know, but maybe there's some sensations of hunger in the stomach coming up, very faint sensations of hunger. Then they are turned into a mental image or the idea of I'm hungry. Then comes a thought, what shall I eat? Then maybe there'll come a memory of eating some nice, well-prepared tofu. And then comes the thought, now I want to eat tofu. And just to formulate that thought, I want to eat tofu, there will be probably thousands of thought processes going into that one thought.
Even more so. So after you arrive at the decision, you want to eat the tofu after thousands of mental processes, it takes you 6 seconds to speak it out. And we know each 1 second has billions of a moment, and one chitta happens only one moment. So my question is like, how does the mind manage the continuity? You need 6 seconds or 6 billion of a moment to speak out one chitta. So is there anywhere in Abhidhamma or Buddhist theory like doing this sort of a time scale transform? You are basically dealing with milliseconds 2 seconds to realize that a chitta. So it's a vast time scale transform.
Yeah, there'll be many of these nanosecond cognitive processes arising. There's some way in which they are synthesized to form thoughts of which we become aware. How this happens, I mean, there might be like Abhidhamma commentaries, sub-commentaries that explain that, but I don't know it in detail.
But can I assume that during that 6 seconds, I'm speaking out about my wanting eat tofu, there's no other chitta arising in my mind?
Since mind processes are occurring so fast, by the time that you're saying, I want to eat tofu, there could be at the subliminal level many other chittas and chitta processes going on, but they're also happening so quickly that they don't register in full awareness. So you're saying, I want to eat tofu, maybe you're saying this to your friend, and so at the same time you're saying this, there'll be processes where you're taking in the visual image of your friend's face, turning it into a recognition of your friend, and then that will fade away and replaced by continuity of speaking, a resumption of the speech to eat, then another recognition process of your friend, then tofu. But it's all going by so quickly that it seems to you you're looking at your friend and simultaneously saying, I want to eat tofu.
The force maintaining the continuity is probably very magical. So, I have a short question as well. The theory you taught today, like the 17 moments for all these kind of different processes, are these exclusively Buddhism, or is it shareable or parallel to other Indian religion?
The idea of the 17-moment cognitive, I think this is quite exclusive to, not only to Buddhism, but I think it's quite exclusive to the Theravada Abhidhamma system. In the Savastivada, because I don't know the Savastivada, they don't have the idea of the 17 mind moments.
Thank you.
Okay, Yong, and you next, and then way in the back with Donna.
So going back to the question of Bahia Sutta and going back to practicality. Now, isn't there an Abhidharma system where there is some sort of breaking the link somewhere? Like, you remember we have dependent origination, and we can actually, for example, in the Javana process, now respond, so it sort of breaks the linkage. Is that basically the Abhidharmic model, kind of closer to dependent origination, that you can actually, during the Javana process, we can look at that in micro moments and break the linkage so that we stop this whole dependent arising kind of happening? Isn't that kind of parallel somehow?
What breaks the link in Abhidhamma terms would be the 4 supramundane paths. There's no breaking the link of cognitive processes. Even the Arahant has cognitive processes.
Yeah, because cognizing is cognized, so that Buddha is including that in that Bahia Sutta. So, okay.
Yeah, but it's the 4 paths that eliminate the kilesas, the mental defilements. Then when the mental defilements are removed, then what you call the link is broken.
And I think the question all of us has is like, the Bahia had that shortcut, so what about the rest of us? Do you know what I mean? It's such a special, I think, sutta in the sense that it's so impressive that he was one of the fastest person to ever, and then he died afterwards, right?
Yeah, he died afterwards.
And Buddha said he's become an arahant, so he's okay.
Yeah.
So, so we're interested in that kind of, maybe there's a shortcut.
Yeah. Okay. Then I said, your name was?
Min.
That's right, Ming, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bandy. And I have a question on page 171. And there, at the end of the 2 paragraph, it's very interesting to me. So the very
page
end,
171?
171, and the last 2 paragraphs.
Yeah.
okay, first paragraph, it basically says, okay, if the sense come in, it's desirable, undesirable, and there's nothing you can do about it, and then it's if the unpleasant feeling, it's from the beginning to the end, to the registration. That sounds to me like that.
I'm looking at, which paragraph is it?
The 17, the 17.
Okay, 17, yeah.
Analysis of registration.
Yeah.
So basically, if you read first paragraph, the jhavana doesn't take place. It bypasses jhavana from the very beginning to the very end, whatever quality it is, and then that's it. Right? From the undesirable to start with, and also coincidences when an object is undesirable, the fivefold sense consciousness, reception, investigation, and then registration are unwholesome.
Right.
That's the same flavor, right? The same flavor. Start from unwholesome or undesirable and end with unwholesome.
Yeah.
And jhavana doesn't take place, doesn't take any role in these circumstances.
Yeah. At this point, the jhavana hasn't yet arisen.
Yes, and then even that sounds to me like even you say 17, 70 the millisecond or 17 months go very fast. But actually, if you like, I like chocolate, say, and then when I see chocolate, and there are no jhavana can stop it. Is that means that?
Is that
means the jhavana doesn't change because jhavana, the second paragraph then introduce jhavana into the picture. And say in this connection, at the end of functional jhavana accomplished by joy and there registration, is that means, what exactly it means actually I don't know, is that means that changed the first contradiction with the first paragraph, what exactly it is.
Okay, let me just take a look at
Thank you.
Okay. I have to read this and think about this. I have to say my mind is getting a little tired now. I'll think about it though this evening at my leisure, and then I'll try to answer tomorrow. Oh, you put that note here.
Play in this mind process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, then we take one last question from Donna, then we'll have to stop. Then we have to turn to silence.
Bhante, my question also refers to these 17 mind moments. And I just want to check something. The way I see it, it's actually just one unit, one module of the ongoing process.
Yeah.
It's like when you're doing computer modeling, you realize you see cycles. So you just model one component and you run it over and over. You see, when you open your eyes, look at something, as long as the mind focus is aligned, there is ongoing input going on. There is ongoing firing. So each firing may take 17 mind moments, but as long as your mind focus and your physical focus are aligned, it just keeps on going. And if you rest your attention for a long time, it gets stronger and stronger. So that's in essence what I see. So is that consistent with, the Abhidhamma or the way you understand things?
Well, of course, if you continue to focus on the same object, then the citta viti, the cognitive process, will get stronger and stronger with regard to that object. Yeah, that would be consistent. I just want to look at this passage again to see if I could answer that question. It takes me a moment to sort of digest what I'm looking at. Okay, I think the explanation actually comes on page 173 in the guide section, where we have in bold the words, "in this connection too." Okay, then after that it says, when an arahant experiences an extremely desirable object, his jhavanas occur as one of the 4 functional citas accompanied by joy, and the registration citas will occur as one of the 5 resultants accompanied by joy. That's the 4 great resultants or the investigating consciousness accompanied by joy. When the arhat experiences an undesirable or this was the sentence that I had to sort of revise. When an arhat experiences an undesirable object, then the jhavanas occur accompanied by equanimity, and the registration citas will be the unwholesome resultant investigating consciousness accompanied by equanimity. And then when the arhat experiences a desirable neutral object, the jhavanas will occur accompanied by equanimity, and the registration citas will be either the investigating consciousness accompanied by equanimity or neutral feeling, or one of the 4 beautiful resultants, sense sphere beautiful resultants accompanied by equanimity, by neutral feeling. Does that answer the question? Yeah, this is only for arahants, because only the arahants will have these functional citas. In the case of a non-arahant,
yeah, for ordinary person, so basically just if it's undesirable, then just reject.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think...
No, I get it.
Let us turn all of the mental chatter into silence, quiescence, by moving over to the meditation section.